Well, hello YouTube. It's Mike here. Upon special request from somebody who likes my cooking, asked me how to make this fancy pasta dish that I make using homemade Alfredo sauce using whipping cream. So I will give you a fairly decent demonstration on how to do this. First, you will need about a handful of these. I suggest peeled Pacific white shrimp. I'm using the 70 to 90, which is the size, but usually use 50 to 60 because they're bigger. You also use about a cup of this pasta, which is already pre-cooked, about this much Parmesan, and this size of whipping cream. You first cook the prawns, or tiger shrimp, or white shrimp as they're called, in a pan separately. At least that's how I do it. And don't cook them fully because you don't want them to be all too cooked. And you get your about 3 slices of bacon, 6 of these mushrooms sliced. You put the mushrooms, the bacon, and a little bit of butter in the pan. And that helps the, butter just helps with the flavor. You put garlic and butter in the pan for the shrimp. And you get these until they're sauteed. So that's pretty much ready there. And then you add, once you get that done, you add your whipping cream. And this is the part where you have to do a lot of stirring so you don't burn it. And you don't have it up too high. There we have the whipping cream in the pan with the mushrooms and the bacon. And wouldn't hurt to throw a little bit of salt and pepper in there as well while it's cooking. And you have to keep stirring the whipping cream. Turn it up to about half. And I suggest using something like this that will get around the edge of the pan. And it just makes it more consistent. And you have to stir it constantly. You also, when the whipping cream is also almost completed and cooked down and reduced, you add about this much Parmesan cheese, which I'll add at the end. The pasta's pre-cooked, the prawns, shrimp are pre-cooked, just so that you add it all at the end. And I also add a bunch of nacho cheese in there with it. Now, usually a dish like this, you would add chicken or ground beef. But chicken right now at the grocery store is super expensive. And I wasn't going to defrost and cut up a pork chop to put in it. I just thought I'll do with the shrimp. You can add anything to this, but I've always learned in the restaurants, this fancy pasta dish, they use shrimp, and well, that's more the seafood version. But this homemade Alfredo pasta dish, it's quite customary that they add chicken to it. And usually in the pan, they will add chicken breast all cut up into pieces. And that also adds the flavor of the chicken to the pasta dish. So this stage takes the longest. And I'll turn it up a little bit. And you just have to stir it constantly. And then just watch to make sure that it doesn't bubble over. And using a big wide pan like this helps it cook quicker. If you try to use a sauce pot, it will be more like a soup. Sure, it'll cook down, but with more open space, it has more room for the moisture to evaporate and for the Alfredo sauce to take its form. And as you can probably see here, It's starting to bubble. And this is the part where you got to be careful and watch what you're doing. Always get around the edges. And it's already starting to thicken up a bit. And some people also add a little bit of parsley or green onion to it for color. You can also add little bits of tomato. I didn't buy tomato today, I forgot. But this is the process that is the most important. The reducing of the whipping cream for the Alfredo sauce. And just making sure you stir it really consistently so you don't burn the pan. A good cook will never burn the pan. Not saying if you burn it, you don't know how to cook, but it's really time consuming to stir it constantly. So this part is probably the most technical. Now those are pretty much done. They're not fully cooked, but you add those to the pasta just before it's done and they'll finish. They're cooked enough to where when you add it, it's not going to really need much time to finish. So as you can see, it's really starting to thicken up here. And to this pasta dish, I also add, about a cup of these little noodles, pre-cooked, and then cool it so it doesn't keep cooking. You want it al dente. And so as you can see, it's starting to thicken up here. This pasta dish is one I learned to cook at a restaurant in West Vancouver back in about 1997 at a place called the Salmon House on the Hill up in Folkestone Way, up in the British Properties area in West Vancouver. It's a seafood restaurant that's still there. Reservation, dress code. It's a really high-end fancy seafood restaurant and they have really amazing food. However, the menu and the staff and management has completely changed since I worked there. So I'm not exactly sure what their menu's like, but it's really good fresh seafood. And during July, they used to have fresh Alaska king crab come in these big styrofoam crates. And those were a pretty sweet deal. And because I worked as a dishwasher, I got to eat anything I wanted in that kitchen for free. So halibut is really good in this type of pasta as well. You can put salmon, trout, ground beef, chicken, pork if you want. So this process is the longest, most time consuming. But once you get the hang of it, you can just tell when it's done. It's still pretty watery, but it's reducing. And you always want to watch the edges so it doesn't bake on the edges. And at the end, you'll also want to add nacho or whatever cheese you want. I add nacho because it's mozzarella and cheddar mixed. You can use provolone or any of those. Monterey Jack cheese is good to add to this if you like a little spice. So as you can see, it's starting to reduce. You can tell that by when it scrapes away from the pan, it comes back slowly. So this is the getting close to being done. Now I don't add the Parmesan cheese until nearly the end because the cheese melted will burn on the pan and it makes everything really sticky. So doing it this way, where you add everything at the end, it seems to work better for just having it all ready at once. But preparing the pasta first, preparing the prawns first, having this. And for mushrooms, you use about 5 or 6 of these mushrooms here, all sliced up really thin. And about, what I think I mentioned, 3 slices of bacon cut up really thin. And so this is how this pasta dish that I learned to make at the salmon house on the hill is basically done. So I got a phone call, but I'll take that later. So as you can see, it's really starting to reduce. So now I will add the Parmesan cheese. It's really starting to reduce now. I'll add the prawns, shrimp, I mean. I mentioned it was prawns, but prawns are a lot bigger. So there you add the shrimp, and then you add your pasta, and then you mix it all together. And also and then shut the pan off, because the heat from the pan will finish reducing it all. So that's how that's done. And that's basically it. But then, to add a little bit more pizzazz to it, you add a bunch of nacho cheese already grated up. And that will really give it that final step. Add a little bit of salt and pepper. And on top of that, you can add a little bit of parsley. Gives it that green appearance, gives it kind of some color.